So you forgive her, or how'd you?
That's been part of my process, man. And this is what I think in our society is probably one of the biggest lack of education that we have in the healing and trauma space, or just in life in general, is that when we've all got pain, it's impossible to go through this world without experiencing some kind of hurt. But to forgive allows us to actually be free of this. We have a victim mentality, I think, in the world. It's easier to be a victim. We've got a reason to fail. But again, it's the hero's journey is about being able to face the demons, the dragons inside of us, to face them down and to release that. I believed I was a product of my environment. I thought that my past determined my future. I didn't think that I had the ability to change until I got to the point of rehab at 30 years old. It was my rock bottom, and I knew that I was either going to end up in prison or dead, and the only other option was to change.
I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we meet and record on, the Darug people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to the elders, past and present. Welcome everybody to A Colourful Past Podcast. I am your host, Danny Shannon, where every story told proves that your past does not define your future. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode. We were just having a conversation. I'm with Jason Blyth, and you mentioned something about a satanic cult that you're a part of. It's pretty heavy straight off the bat. Jace, what do you mean, a satanic cult?
Yeah, this was a big part of my journey. I was a big stage of my life. I was doing a lot of music. Big stage. I went and recorded over in Hollywood. I was having some conversations with some pretty big producers at that stage of my life, and came back to Australia. Things fell over at the time, and for me it was part of this journey of awakening. I think my journey into, I've always believed in God, but I was very angry at God from a young age because of my childhood, which we'll obviously probably get into a little bit. And for me it was, I'd been told all my life essentially that I was going to be a bad kid, and I was like, if you want a bad kid, I'll give you the worst. So a big part of that was, it was almost like I was chucking the middle finger.
That was here in Sydney?
Yeah, I was here in Sydney, but it's, they're all over the
It's a little bit underground, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not obviously hugely out in the open or anything like that, what I was involved in anyway.
Is that like devil worship? Is that what a satanic cult is?
Pretty much, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, it reminds me of some heavy metal music too. I know that I don't know much about this stuff. I'm a believer of God for sure too. The devil, it's funny you say that because I was with a mate yesterday. He's quite into Christianity at the moment. He said to me, Danny, Satan's a gronk. I said, I love that. We use that as a little bit of a hook. Jason, thank you so much for coming on here. You landed in rehab at age 30 for a serious alcohol problem. I recently did a little bit of research on you, and the first thing that popped up was a TED Talk or a TED Talk style. Was it a TED Talk?
It wouldn't have been a TED Talk, but I'm a speaker, so there's a fair bit of that sort of stuff online. Yeah,
wonderful. And you've turned your life around. It sounds like you have a colourful past and you're doing some incredible things in the future. So welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you, man. Amazing room, as I was saying.
It is. It's a pretty cool studio. That's another thing that stood out to me is you've got the look to. I see a couple of face tats. You're covered up in the tats, and you're out here. You've come from a colourful past, and you're doing good things today, man. So I've got to get this guy on the show. You know?
Yeah, thank you. I have definitely had a colourful past. That's certainly. I think it adds to the character and the flavour, right? And I do a bit of speaking in the corporate space, and I know I'm not classically your corporate type, but that's part of the advantage, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is.
It brings this richness, and I think this texture. I love that people are surprised when I actually open my mouth and they get to know. It'd be the same as you. You're a big teddy bear, but people would have these instant judgments, and I love being able to break through those and dispelling those initial thoughts that people have, because I do really think it makes you more endearing.
Yeah, I think authenticity, honesty, obviously we've got that past, but being able to connect with people on a level that makes them feel good about themselves and gives them some hope for the future is the whole idea, isn't it?
Man, in this day and age, I think hope is a fundamental part of what makes up our society. Look, I speak a lot about mental health issues, and in Australia, we're a first world country, at least we're told that anyway. But just very quickly, some of the statistics that I speak about around mental health, which clearly show that we've got some problems, is that 1 in 5 Australians today are currently medicated for mental health issues. That's like the entire population of Sydney needing drugs just to function. And according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 1 in every 2 Australians, they predict at some point in their life will have a mental disorder. That's not normal.
It's not normal.
No. So we need hope is the point of all of this. If we don't have hope, then of course...
Are those tragic numbers for Australia only, or is that worldwide?
That's Australia.
It's funny you say that, because just last night I was with my beautiful partner and she was doing some research around Newcastle, the numbers of people affected by a substance abuse in Newcastle, and it was like 80% consume alcohol. It doesn't mean they're affected negatively, but the numbers that seek help is actually quite high. Is this like an Australian problem?
I think it's a world problem.
Yeah,
I do definitely think it's a world problem. And for me, a big the mission that I have and really what's shaped my entire story, and I think is really the central issue in our society in the West, but in Australia, all over the world, is abusive childhoods, like kids growing up in unsafe homes. The statistics are horribly shocking for a first world country, and New South Wales are bad enough as well. But for me, this was what really set me off on a bad path. And I think really leads to the big causes of why we have a lot of violent crime, obviously a lot of crime in general, addiction problems, the kind of trauma and mental health issues that we do have. It stems from an unstable foundation, and there needs to be more done about it to actually ensure that our kids are growing up in safe homes.
Man, he really hits the spot. I've got an 8-year-old daughter. This happens to me in every single episode. For some reason, everything always comes back to our childhoods. But you're so right. Do you know what? I want to tell you something. This is a horrible statistic about A Colourful Past Podcast. 20 guests, probably 15 of them have been at the hands of some kind of sexual abuse as well.
Yeah.
Like, that's absolutely fucking horrific. I understand my niche, the people that I hang around seem to be, because I support individuals in the mental health and drug and alcohol space, I might be a little bit more connected to those people. Just that in itself is absolutely horrific, man.
It's insane. And the fact that, I mean, you've got an 8-year-old, I've got a 10-month-old, just you see how innocent they are, and the way that you can crush their spirit. And this is what it leads to. This is what I think these mental health issues and these what becomes drug addictions or alcohol addictions, and really it comes down to a lack of self-worth, really, to even believe that we have the self-worth. And it's horribly, horribly depressing, and you see this. And I think a big part of the issue as well for me when I went through my journey, we can get into whatever parts of it you want to, was that I believed, and the system says that it's going to come and save us or it's going to fix us, and it never does. It never does at all. So you give your power away to something that's never actually going to fix you, and you wait for someone else to save you your whole life. And when that savior never comes, you get more and more embittered and darker and go into more of a spiral. And of course, you're going to lean for escapism, for things like drugs and alcohol or sex or gambling or whatever type of addiction that we've all got a proclivity for something or a natural inclination for something. And I think a lot of it obviously stems from our childhood.
And look, furthermore to that as well, if something else has just come to my mind is, at some point, is it true? Like, we need to take, doesn't matter, like it does matter. Of course, our childhood, our past, our environment influence who we became. But at some point, if I don't step up, and I think this is really, really, really important, if I don't step up and take responsibility and start, because nobody else is going to fix me.
No.
This is up to me.
No.
Is that right? Would you say, like, if at some point I needed to stand up and take responsibility and start the healing myself?
Well, let's go deep then. Like, I think this is the very reason why we're even here on earth. If you're a believer, I'm a believer.
Yeah.
Why are we here? And I think that the very reason why we're even here on earth is that we're having a real-time experience of having to overcome the stuff that would essentially drag us to hell. And one of the things I speak about a lot and I'm fascinated by is this universal principle throughout myth, throughout different religions, of the hero's journey. And the hero, to become the hero, they have to go into the cave to cross the threshold where they know the dragon that would kill them is inside, but the dragon that we fear most is really ourself. Yeah. And the battle is this battle in our minds, this fear that we all encounter. But the hero has to go on the journey to learn to overcome themselves, to gain the spiritual wisdom, to then come back into the real world, not to be the hero, but to then become the teacher, or the sage to help guide others. But I do think this is the very reason why we're even here on earth, and I think we forget that as I believe life is a test for us to be able to earn our way back into an eternal realm.
And on that note, a lot of people don't fight the dragon, but do they?
No.
So they end up either taking their life, I have to say again, this is something I hear so much about here on the show, or they get stuck in addiction, alcoholism, gambling, and to the bitter ends. Tell me about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Zealand in a small place called Nelson, so top of the South Island. Very small place. It's still a city, but about 45,000 people. I have a pretty hectic story, and this is what shapes this whole sort of like mystical bringing of me into the world. So
Sure.
at 16, my mum was a prodigy child. She was training with the New Zealand Olympic swimming team. She was taking the world's highest piano exams with the likes of the greatest students in the country, and she was about to leave school early to go to university to become a dentist. But one afternoon, she made a decision to get on the back of a motorbike that she wasn't supposed to be on with a boyfriend that she wasn't supposed to have. And as they were cruising through small town New Zealand, all of a sudden a vehicle came out of nowhere, clipped the back of the bike, sent her flying, and she came down hard on her head where she was instantly knocked unconscious. And after she was raced to hospital, she was placed onto a ventilator for life support because she couldn't breathe on her own. And then my grandparents eventually were met by the doctors who said she would never be anything more than a bedside vegetable. So my grandparents made the really difficult decision of unplugging the life support machine, but she breathed on her own. But she was still in a coma, brain dead. And then 6 months later, she woke up. And there's no medical explanation for her survival, none. My grandma maintained until she died that her survival was nothing short of a genuine miracle. But she's brain damaged. She was paralyzed down her entire right side. She had to relearn to walk, talk, write. And like the worst part of it was that her emotional regulation was gone. She'd now go from hysterically laughing to crying to rage like that. And that was what she would then take out later on me. 10 years later, she met my biological father when he put a classified ad in the newspaper seeking friends. And I guess my mum thought that she needed some friends. So she met with him. Eventually he moved away, but fell on some difficult times. He was heavily involved in gangs in New Zealand and had like a 20-year heroin addiction. He was a jockey as well. So he was involved in some like pretty heavy stuff. But when my mum went to go and help him out of a difficult time, one night he snuck into her room and he raped her. And that's how I was conceived. So I know they're out there, but until this day, I've never met another child born of rape, right? So I came into this world
There's been someone on this episode, I forget who it is, but we've got another person.
You may have to introduce me because
Yes,
I've still never ever met another. But I came into this world under this very dark cloud, right? Just feeling like, as I was saying at the very start, I believe God must have created me to be destroyed. I thought God hated me. So basically straight away, my mum, she rejected me like a bird would do with its baby. But I had my first psychology appointment at 2 years old because my mum was trying to kill me because I reminded her of being raped and my biological father. So grew up with a lot of violence. Between 2 and 15, I saw about 20 different clinicians, but I was never taken away. There were reports started and dropped.
So you stayed with mum through that whole time?
So I lived between my mum and my stepdad when she got married a little bit later on, and between my grandparents. So I was never fully taken away, and this was part of the issue, is she still had access to me. Yeah. And there were multiple reports written that even though she'd go to anger management classes and things, she'd never change because she was brain injured. It wasn't a choice that she was making. She couldn't do anything. She had a physical impairment. But obviously it didn't stop me from being abused. And at 9 years old, I remember, and it's in my mental health records, are that thick until I left home at 15. At 9 years old, I yelled at a psychiatrist and I was like, I'm being abused. Why do I have to come to these appointments? Why isn't it the people that are abusing me? And even at that age, I was like, this doesn't seem right. Why am I being made out to be this problem child? People aren't born broken, I don't think. I don't think people are born as serial killers or rapists or pedophiles. I think people have become products of their environment. But I was never taken away. And then again at 11, I was at an appointment with my mum at our GP, and I begged the doctor to be taken away because I was sick of being hurt. And it started reports. Imagine an 11-year-old, like a 9-year-old, 11-year-old, having to advocate for themselves, right, because of the stuff that you're going through. Child Protection started investigations. The caseworker that was with the organisation in New Zealand eventually left, and the case was completely lost, dropped for 2.5 years. And when it was finally picked up again, they'd said that they hadn't had any more reports. They just left it. And this caused me obviously untold trauma. It made me lose total trust in the system that should have been protecting me. I had no trust in any authority. You can only imagine what that would do. And I learned after sharing my story over and over and over again that nothing was ever going to change. So eventually I went quiet and had my voice taken away. And yeah, that was the start of it. Left home at 15, thought I was going to be sweet because I was like, oh, my circumstances have changed, all my problems are circumstantial, it's going to be done. I didn't realize I was traumatized, and it was in me. It didn't matter where I went, my problems came too.
Jason, so what kind of abuse are we talking, if you don't mind?
Physical and sexual. My mum wasn't the one that was sexually abusing me. I actually have no recollection whatsoever of any of my sexual abuse, but I know it categorically it happened because from about 3 years old, I was a hypersexualized child. All of my friendships were sexual. It was used as like a dominance tactic, and it was obviously it's a learned behavior. I mean, you've got a young child, I'm sure you wouldn't see hypersexuality in a 3-year-old unless it was something that they would be educated in. Yeah.
So your trauma has shut out that completely.
Yep. And it's pretty common.
Yeah.
It's pretty common.
I hear it is very common. What about the physical trauma?
Yeah, so that I remember a huge amount of, and it was obviously my mum. She would go, like I was saying before, she would just go from hysterically laughing to rage with the flick of a finger because of her brain injury. And it was bad. Like I would be laying on the floor in a ball. She'd be stomping on my head, whacking me around the head with belt buckles. She's chucked boiling water on me, that kind of stuff. It was bad. And this was the stuff that had been reported to people, but again, I was never taken away. And I knew that at different times, if my mum had caught me in those moments where she was in a full savage rage, that she would have killed me. And there was one way out of the house, and I knew I just had to get outside and up into our big backyard where she couldn't catch me, and I'd have to just chill there until she calmed down and I could go back inside.
Bro, fuck. Absolutely horrific. How's your relationship with mum today? Where's mum?
Mum's still in Nelson, and it's very surface level. Again, she's brain injured, so the conversation is very basic. I'd say she probably has the mental capacity of maybe like a 10 or a 12-year-old.
So you forgive her, or
that's been part of my process, man. I do think that genuinely, and it's a fantastic question. I really, really love that.
Because I automatically just fucking hate her at the moment. Like I hear this stuff and like please just understand where I'm coming from.
Totally.
Like I just feel so fucking like this stuff just makes me so angry, to hear this stuff. So yeah, please go on.
Thank you, bro. No, this was part of my healing journey, and I think it's a fundamental part of the Christian faith as well. Is that the Bible clearly says that if we don't forgive others, God won't forgive us, right? Like we've all done things, but it was part of my journey, and I do believe it is a necessity to forgive for actual healing to be able to be complete.
Forward,
You can't harbor unforgiveness and this deep resentment and be free.
I heard you talk about that in one of your talks, actually. Yeah,
it's necessary. It is vital. If you have unforgiveness, you will always be bound to be someone's victim.
Yeah.
And this is what I think in our society is probably one of the biggest lack of education that we have in the healing and trauma space, or just in life in general, is that when we've all got pain, it's impossible to go through this world without experiencing some kind of hurt. But to forgive allows us to actually be free of this. We have a victim mentality, I think, in the world. It's easier to be a victim. You've got a reason to fail. Yeah, but it's the hero's journey is about being able to face the demons, the dragons inside of us, to face them down and to release that. Because for me, it was like, I believed I was a product of my environment. I thought that my past determined my future. I didn't think that I had the ability to change. I just didn't.
Until when?
Until I got to the point of rehab at 30 years old. It was my rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was either going to end up in prison or dead.
Yeah.
And the only other option was to change. And I was like, man, I'm the only one that can do this. No one's coming to save me. I realized that no one was coming to save me.
Yes.
And I'm going to have to save myself.
I agree.
And a lot of Christians hate when you say that no one's coming to save you. I mean, obviously he's coming back at the end of time to save the world, but until then, we do have to use, the skills and the resources available to us, like the Bible and the power to be able to become overcomers. It's part of our journey. And what I said before, this is the reason why we're here, is to learn to overcome. And even though the whole world would be set against us to try and crush and destroy our spirit, we have to become overcomers like him and to shine the light against all adversity. And that, I think, is really becoming the salt of the earth, like the Bible calls us to be. So, yeah, there was a big lot of forgiveness that had to have happened at all the points along the way about the system failing me.
Oh, that's another thing. Like, fuck, whereabouts?
New Zealand and Nelson. So top of the south is where I grew up.
That makes me so angry too. Like, to have a child, and I know this stuff happens, like, but fuck, like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Doctors, like, what kind of duty of care responsibility do these people have when they've got a kid? And you hear it over, especially back then. I think it's a little bit better today, but back then you hear some of these horrific stories. It makes me angry as well.
Right? No, it's still. I'll talk about it because this is like. I'm so grateful for everything that's happened to me. Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing because I believe in our trials is where our purpose is revealed, right? It's the thing that can actually help the whole process of redemption where the pain actually becomes your mission. So I know that I have a very unique lens and insight that's been given to me because of the life that I've lived and the ability to be able to communicate and advocate for children.
And in fact, on that note, if I can just quickly say, I imagine you love who you are today in your life today. For you to be able to go back and say that, you must be really extremely happy with where you are right now,
Right, if that didn't break me, you can't break me.
Yeah, I love that.
And everyone wants to be resilient. Right? But how do you become resilient? You have to go through stuff, right? Everyone wants to be strong, but to become strong, it means you have to carry things.
Yeah, you do.
If you want to be courageous, well, you have to practice what it means to be courageous. And this is the hero's journey that we're all on. You can't have the resilience and the strength without going through the fire and letting it shape you rather than destroy you. And that becomes a choice. And this is what I speak about. My message is the power of choice. Do you choose to become the villain, or do you choose to rise and become the hero that then goes and helps to save the world, but then to really become the teacher to lead others on the journey too?
Jace, let's just go back to the childhood a bit there. I don't want to focus too much on this, but you shared some horrific stuff there, getting stomped on your head as a kid, having boiling water thrown on you. Like, of course, this is what makes me so angry about your mum, but how old were you then? And, like, how did you survive that? What, like, are you scarred? Like, obviously, emotionally, you're scarred. You've done a lot of work too. How does a kid go through that? How old were you?
So, as I said, my first psychology appointment was at 2 years old. So the referral said, please, you need to see Jason and his mum because she's having thoughts of wanting to kill him. And this was when it first started. So from that age and onwards. And it was one of those things where, we are strong. And I think this is where compartmentalization and disassociation, God's put in these abilities for us to be able to navigate physically. Yeah. And I think this is where obviously the lack of memory around the sexual abuse was obviously so horrific that if I can remember this stuff, that was obviously too much, right? That I think is where you have your soul fragmented to the point where it's almost, this is where I think you get, psychopaths and sociopaths and things like that, is that like you become no longer human. So there was a part of me that always knew, there was a small voice in me that always knew that one day it would make sense. And it does now, but it took a long time to go through that process. And just something in me told me to carry on and keep going. And I believe now it was obviously the Spirit, it's God's way of being able to communicate that. But I wouldn't have had the words to probably describe it then at the time. But it was formation. It was training. It was training for a very certain job, and a big part of my my journey, which I'll share, is so a big part of this was that I settled a historic abuse claim at the end of 2022 with the New Zealand government, which I went through.
Good.
It took 4 years to go through because there was that many cases, but they issued me an apology letter, a measly amount of compensation, 16,000 New Zealand dollars. So it was about 12 grand Aussie. Nothing, right? Like nothing for I'm one of the only, very few people that actually come out the size of this, the other side. And most people go through hell and probably never do. Maybe they end up taking their lives, or the destruction that it ends up leaving. I mean, if you've been through trauma and had addiction, the destruction you leave on other people too, it's untold the damage that one person can have on the world. And this is the point of what needs to change about it. And you said before, it may seem to be better. I don't think it is. Some of the statistics, and I'll give you some just to shock you, please, which I speak about and what needs to change. So here in New South Wales in 2000, there was a report done by the Audit Office of New South Wales about Department of Communities and Justice, DCJ. So these are the stewards of child protection here in New South Wales. And this report, every report of child abuse goes through the DCJ hotline. Okay, so there were 400,000 reports that year that met the threshold of presumed to be at risk of significant harm. 75% of all of those cases, 85,000 children, had their cases closed without a caseworker ever visiting them in the home because of a lack of resourcing, right? So 85,000 children are potentially going through that kind of stuff and not having it investigated. And this is the thing. This is in one state, in 1 year, and we live in a first world country. And this is the issue: is kids aren't being protected. They're growing up in homes where their right to safety is not being upheld. And this is the thing. And most people have no idea how deeply ingrained it is as part of this culture. And if you want a safe future, for this country, if you want Australia to be a safe country for your daughter, for my son, this is the stuff that definitively needs to change. And this is my mission. So, I've gone through all the stuff that I went through so that I can be the guy to help to bring this voice for those ones that haven't gone through it, and to be able to hold the system to account. It's supposed to be doing a job, and it's not. It's negligent. It's no different from an abusive parent in the home. And what happens when you abuse your kids? You get them taken off you. Well, what's happening here? It's allowed to perpetuate. And this is the thing that really does. It definitively needs to change, because the most vulnerable people that are going to be shaping this society and the future of the world for all of us in the generations to come are growing up in a toxic environment. As the Bible says, can a rotten tree produce good fruit? No. So if the foundation is poisoned, what can we hope for the future of this country? More drug addicts, more domestic violence, more people that perpetuate abuse towards their own children. It's cyclical. The only way we're going to have to change is to properly invest in money and actually do something different.
It's fucking scary, as you're saying that. I know, and I'm sure you can understand this too. With my child, I provide the best, safest, hyper vigilant I am around her being safe, because of all this stuff that I'm exposed to, the stuff that I've been through, etc., etc. But when you're saying that, in the future too, I'm thinking automatically about her children. So it's fine, because I often live in a bit of a bubble. So everything around me is really safe. I make the most of my environment and the people in my environment, but outside of that is my bubble that I can't control as well. And you just mentioned, what are we going to do? How do we start helping this country almost? It sounds like New Zealand, Australia, I think are very, very similar, aren't they? For many, many reasons. We're very similar.
For sure. And definitely way not advanced enough. I think there needs to be some big changes when it comes to the different levels of government when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Is today? Is this a bit of you said this is your mission kind of thing? What do you do today?
Yeah, so this. I mean, obviously, I use my voice now. I've been given a gift. I've got an amazing story. And I'm grateful
and you tell
for
it really well too. I'm enjoying your storytelling, the hero journey. This is stuff that I've heard on my journey. Yeah, I like the way you tell your story, by the way. I
Thank
think
you.
it's
Yeah.
impactful.
Well, I think this is the point: is you have to tell it in a way where it can hopefully inspire and
Yeah.
give people as well the strength to be able to go on their own journey as well. And the only way we can do that is to shine a light. So I've got this story. I've obviously understand that God's given me a gift to be able to tell it and to share it, which a lot of people
survive what
don't.
you went through.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of people that go through the kind of stuff that I've gone through, they can't speak well, unfortunately, or they're either so full of rage that they lose all credibility because you're so full of fury.
Yeah.
You just want to tear the system down.
Because they haven't healed, because they're not healing.
Exactly, because it's a lack of forgiveness, a lack of healing,
yes.
a lack of ownership of what they can do in the future, because you feel disempowered. You feel like a victim, and a victim position can't really heal or forgive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's this really important correlation to all of this stuff. But so using my voice and getting involved in advocacy space to try and create some systemic change. And I think there needs to be more federal standards for the way that child protection is enforced rather than being state-based. For me, it's a non-negotiable thing. We can't have all these different organisations between the way that the police, DCJ, Office of Child and Guardian, they all have different policies and way of being able to do things. They don't communicate between each other. They've all got different reporting times and different standards. There needs to be something far more substantial, and this is just in New South Wales, there needs to be a standard across all the states and territories that actually creates some real change. And I'm surprised in 2026 that we even need to have this conversation. But this is the thing, is our communities, unfortunately, just don't have the awareness around a lot of this stuff. So education into community and to what's going on is a vital part of it. And that's why, doing podcasts, speaking about it, advocating for it and getting more people behind it is necessary for this.
Do you think we're finally, like in the last couple of years, do you think we're finally starting to talk more about it and get it exposed more? Because I've definitely noticed I've been doing my sharing of stories for quite a long time. In fact, it started back in 2018. I started on LinkedIn telling people I used to be a heroin addict, shooting up dirty toilet water, and now I'm clean and sober. It kind of took off back then. Back then it's like, who is this fucking guy saying this stupid shit? But now, everywhere I look, people are sharing their raw, unguarded stories. And I think the last couple of years, we're starting to break some of that silence around that. Is that a thing, or is it just in my little social media world?
No, I think this is a necessary part of God's plan as well. The darkness is being exposed. The Bible talks.
Yeah, you keep reflecting back on that. I like that.
Well, the Bible talks about how everything that's done in the dark will eventually be brought to light. And between things like the Me Too movement, all of this Epstein stuff that's going on, around the world, there's a bunch of these huge scandals that have been there bubbling underneath the surface, are finally coming up.
Like the Epstein thing.
Like this, exactly. And it goes obviously very deep. And it's systemic. It's worldwide, the stuff that's been going on. And so I think a lot of it's obviously the permission for people to be able to share it.
Yes.
Obviously we're able to see more and more people advocating for it.
Yes.
But there's also a risk of that too, which I think we need to be really conscious of. And one thing I don't love about the church testimonial type of world and the world that we live in a lot of ways is we live in a time now where it feels like sensationalism sells. So people need to have a really extreme, crazy story, and it feels like we're trying to one-up to have these crazy stories to compete with the crazy movies, the crazy video games, TikTok, all of the things that are really trying to steal our attention, and people want to be entertained. And I think there's a real risk of feeling like we have to entertain. And also, one of the things that I think we need to be very careful of as well is a whole bunch of people that haven't yet gone through the process of healing, sharing their stories in a really dangerous way that brings people into a dark place but never brings them back out of it.
And they can get attacked as well. So, like the trolls, for example. So, yeah, fuck, what a great, interesting perspective and conversation. So what I'm hearing is, although it is becoming a lot more common and a lot more out there. At the same time, it's got its negative risk, because actually, as it happens, I just had a guest on the show who we went some very, very deep traumatic stuff, and I was so worried about he's going to walk away from here and not be able to, and I made sure I bring him back, but often we don't, do we? The people are stuck in it.
Well, this is the risk. We can trauma bond with audiences, and there's a real responsibility to be very conscious of how we do that.
Yes.
And it's not just about having these big stories. We need to really be gentle and safe about where we go in them and how we bring people, again, back out and show them the light, the way out of it, rather than just shining a light on the darkness and going, now you're going to have to deal with this heavy, dark stuff. And I get to leave the podcast and I don't take any responsibility at all for how I've affected the audience.
Because shame is a real thing, isn't it? Of course, when we're talking shame, I feel like that's what we're talking about, some level here. So we can go into that shame and the spiral a little bit out of control. And I imagine lots of people this happens to, and then they don't have an outlet.
Yeah, well, I think this is why we have the drug problems we do, or the addiction problems we do.
Well, that's the outlet, isn't it? Fucking
yeah, and I think it's rooted from a lack of healing and obviously shame. You're trying to escape these feelings of a lack of self-worth, a lack of any validity in who we are as souls inside these physical bodies. And I people feel hugely disconnected, and I think we are starting to realize as well that the world isn't quite what it sells itself to be. And for me, I'm going, man, the world told me that I was supposed to be protected. My mum was parents are supposed to love their kids. My mum was supposed to, treat me well. And I grew up in this world where my life looks totally different from the world that I'm sold.
I got a question for you around that as well. What was the word you used at the beginning? Privilegeable middle. What? Australia is a good country. What was the word?
First world.
First world. Sorry, I'm better. And so is New Zealand. I imagine America, UK, and then as we're talking, for some reason I've got this thing in my head. Say you're the second world or whatever you call them, the developing countries. I feel like they've got less drama in them than we have. Is that a thing? Tell me, do you know anything about that?
I would just think they have different problems, right? Everyone's got, I think, wealth class and societal status class have different issues.
What about abuse, drugs and alcohol? Do you know?
I don't know specifically about drugs and alcohol.
But they're not as fucked as us.
I would imagine it'd be, again, different because there's different types of trauma.
Love to hear from you if you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's different types of trauma in a lot of those sorts of worlds, and this is where a lot of trafficking happens. It's different.
Oh my God, that's a horrific subject that I haven't crossed into here on this show.
I think the world all has these different parts of it, and it's all very interconnected. We obviously have a lot of language for our trauma in the West, and we have the ability to be able to share it. I think there's probably some horrific things. I love that word that you use. Horrific things that are happening all over the world that we would have no idea about. And again, it's children. But people are just trying to survive because the world's messed up.
Yep, they are just trying to survive. And something else that comes up with me about that, I worked in drug and alcohol rehabilitation. I was a case manager, senior case manager for a long time. I used to do a lot of one-on-one stuff with people, and people would tell me horrific stories of their childhood. One that sticks in my head, I'll never forget, is being pinned down and getting burnt with cigarettes, right? But then I remember, I talk with that person and, they've come so far, like you as that little 2-year-old who's copped some of the shit. And I hear you right now sharing your story, and it's like you talk about, it's almost like it didn't happen in some respects. But if you were the little 2-year-old sitting here and telling me it was happening to you now, what I'm trying to say is that you mentioned this as well. We are built to survive some horrific shit. You said something along those lines. Whether we use denial, we use all our survival instincts to get through that stuff. Yeah, it's just stuff that's coming up for me. All of this stuff really heavily affects me,
And I think as it should, we all should be moved, and we all should be moved in the way that you are. And I think that one of the issues is we're not, as a society. We've accepted the unacceptable, And when it comes to these kinds of conversations, just as an example, I have these kinds of conversations with people around the statistics that's going on here, and people just go, it's just a lack of resourcing. That's not acceptable. For a first world country, even one child that's going through this kind of stuff, there should be cause for serious concern, let alone hundreds of thousands of children across the nation every single year. The country should be outraged. And again, I think it's a lack of education around what's going on, but we're not outraged to the point enough where things are happening. We need more outrage for something to actually change. If it's all just casual and we don't really care or do much about it, nothing will change because we accept it as normal.
I think human beings, Aussies, maybe whatever you're from, we like to, if it gets too serious, I go into my protective mode, even though I don't so much here on the show. And whenever I talk about kids, I'm always on super hypervigilance, but I go into my bubble and I'm not proud to say this, but this is the way I survive, I guess, and
for sure.
Basically, so what's the answer?
Well, this goes back to the hero's journey thing, right? Like, I think if we talk about the hero having to come into the cave and face the dragon in the cave, if we talk about our nation or the world, the Western world, as a metaphorical person, we need to look at this. We need to look into the cave, and we're looking at child abuse going on in huge numbers in the cave, and we need to stare it down. We need to get uncomfortable with it. I think part of the problem is that we live in such a highly pressurized Western nation where everyone has to work so hard just to survive. We normalize crazy amounts of debt. We have to just keep our head above water, that people don't even have the ability to kind of get involved with a lot of this stuff because they're literally just trying to put bread on the table, try and educate their kids, try and keep up with the mortgage. And lots of people are just moments away or a couple of paychecks away from being homeless. And, how do you advocate for something like this when you're just trying to survive? I think the pressure environment of this, again, this first world, it's crazy, man. Like,
and even on that note, that like we're talking survive with first world problems too. Like it could be fucking 100%. So much worse.
100%.
Jesus, it just goes around in circles. Like you might be in some poverty-stricken country, hungry, but then maybe you're not copping the fucking child abuse, and then you give given the quality of life, and then I guess, and it comes back to God in some respects, or life, or the meaning of life, and you know what? What I know, Jason, I'd love to hear from you. We'll finish up on something. But my purpose in this life is to try and be the very best version of myself, to try and bring kindness, love, happiness to somebody else. I'm really good at doing that. Like, I would like to just simple little things by smiling, saying something nice about somebody, calling them by their name. That's what I'm really good at, I think on this journey of life, find your purpose and share it with the world. That's what I do. I do it pretty good through a bunch of little things. It's really good to meet you. It's good to hear such a jam-packed 40 minutes of traumatic, horrific happiness and good stuff that's happening too. Like it's pretty cool, bro. Do you want to wrap it up with something? Tell me.
What you just said, I absolutely agree with. And one of the things I speak about a lot is that I believe we all have something inside of us that we want to change about the world, right? I think God puts whatever on our hearts. If you want to feed homeless cats, go feed homeless cats.
Yeah, there's plenty of people that do, eh?
Yeah, and you don't, like, if your thing is you want to feed the homeless, like, people, you want to fight against child abuse, you want to advocate for something,
yes.
We don't need a group of people to go and do that. Like, whatever your sphere of influence is, just go and do that thing a bit and give back. Yes. I think if everyone did that thing that's inside them, within their sphere of influence, the world would be a dramatically better place. But we often wait we go, let's go feed the homeless, and we need like a whole crew of people together to go and do that. Yeah. Just go feed the homeless. You just go do it. You just go do your thing. Yeah. And I think if we all just did that little bit, we'd inspire other people. We're not doing it to show people on social media or whatever, but what you're talking about, right? Yeah. Be the best version of whatever you can with what you've got. Yeah. Find some joy in it. Bring some joy to other people, and do what you can within your sphere of influence with the thing that God's put on your heart to change about the world.
Find your passion and share it with the world. It was a bit of advice a mentor gave me, and it's what I do. And I think if you're looking for purpose, that's it. Like, find your passion and share it with the world. I run a group on a Wednesday night. I've been doing so for 5 years. One of the topics is kindness. And one of the things that comes out of kindness is, imagine if every single person, this sounds a bit cliche, but gave a little bit of kindness every day. Like, the world would truly be a better place. I want to add to that too. You did say if everyone, like, there are some really bad people too, but so something you said then just made me think that not everyone does have a good heart, and there's some like, let's face it, there's some really bad people out there too. I don't know where I go with that, but fuck you, I guess, to you.
All we can do is raise the standard, right? Like, a culture, if you've got a toxic culture, it'll create more of a toxic culture. If you've got a good, high-performing culture, the standard rises and people rise up to the level of the culture. If our culture changed and the standard was raised, we'd probably have less of those people.
And those bad people were hurt, weren't they? They
Probably.
were more than likely hurt, like you were.
Yep.
Like your mum was, although it's a bit different because of their brain capacity. And they never did get to heal, and then they spread that darkness on other people. It's a crazy fucking world, bro, we live in.
100%. And one other thing I'd like to just add on the purpose point,
please,
is that I think one of the things that I've learned in my life is that we can often look outside of ourselves for what our purpose is. We look for something. When people go, I want to find my purpose, they'll go, it's got to be something outside of me. But I think that the hero's journey, right, the journey that we go on, the very specific experiences of pain that we experience throughout life, the different challenges, they help show the breadcrumbs for actually what our true purpose is, which is already within us, and based on our experience and the skills that we develop through life, the relationships, the gifts that we have. The truth to our purpose is actually always within, not without.
Yeah. Good stuff, bro. And regardless of what you've been through, how much pain, how much sadness, madness, badness, you can turn your negative hurt, your pain into purpose. And that sounds cliche too, but time after time again, here on this show, we get to document people's journeys from the miseries, to the good stuff. And even though there's lots of good stuff too, life isn't perfect. I struggle on a daily basis with stuff, and I also do really well on a regular basis. And I think the more I try to focus on the positives, sometimes I can be a little bit delusional to the negatives too, to go back to that bubble.
But I'm sure you would agree, and probably with all the people that you've met throughout your life that have decided to overcome the hardship, it's a choice.
Yeah, I do think
it's an attitude. It's a decision that we make to choose that no matter what's happened, one of the big things for me is no matter what's happened in the past, I can't control that, but I can decide my future. And I'll finish what I'm going to say on this. So I speak very heavily. I've got a metaphor of a pen.
And how do people find you as well? To wrap it up with that as well.
For sure. So I tell this story, and I'll just share it with you because I love a good story. Okay, so one of my signature messages is, imagine that you're standing in heaven with God, right, in the moments before you're about to be born into this world. And it's just the two of you. Right, you're standing in this huge, warm library, and it's full of books. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them are really well kept, but others look like they've done it tough. And as you stare through the crystal clear floor to the earth below, you're filled with wonder at the adventure ahead. And God puts his arm around you and he hands you a leather book, but all the pages are blank. And he looks deep into your eyes and he says, as you go on your way, you must forget who you are in this, your heavenly home. But don't worry, my child, I've hidden everything inside that you'd need to find your way back. Take this book. It's to write the story of your life, and you can write it however you like. But when your life is done, your spirit must return to me and your book to this library. But you're needing this as well. And he gives you a pen, and he says, this pen is how you'll write your story. But with this pen alone, your story must be written. And then he says to you, but take great care of it, because many people will come into your life and they'll try to take your pen and write your story for you. Never give away your pen, right? self-authorship. We can choose to write the story that we
I
desire.
was right there. I was right there in the glass floor looking down. I feel like a warm glow around me. It's absolutely beautiful. Love that. Jason, absolute pleasure, mate, to have you on the show. Guys, yeah, stick around. There's been a couple of announcements from our incredible sponsors. Well,
And you can find me everywhere on social media.
Oh, yeah. Where do we find you?
Social media, jason.p.blyth is most of them, and website is jasonblyth.com. So I'm findable.
Boom.